In 2004, Javier Zanetti was one of the most experienced footballers in the world. He had seen everything football had to offer: Champions League finals, World Cups, teammates who were gods of the game. But when he was asked about the most talented player he ever shared a dressing room with, he didn't say Ronaldo. He didn't say Zlatan. He said Adriano. And then he described a moment that has stayed with him ever since. It was pre-season 2004, Inter Milan's training camp. A phone rang in the corridor. Adriano answered it. And then, "I saw him in his room," Zanetti recalled. He threw the phone and started screaming. You couldn't imagine that kind of scream. I get goosebumps even to this day. His father was dead, and the greatest striker of his generation died with him. Not literally, but in every way that mattered on a football pitch. This is the story of Adriano Leite Ribeiro, the Emperor, the man who had everything football could offer, and chose to walk away from all of it. February 17th, 1982, Vila Cruzeiro, Rio de Janeiro. One of the most notorious favelas in one of the most unequal cities on earth. This is where Adriano was born. Not born into poverty as a footnote, but born into a community he would love for the rest of his life. He told the Players' Tribune in 2021, "Outsiders paint a dark picture, always pain and misery. When I think about growing up in the favela, I actually think about how much fun we had. I think about flying kites, kicking a football in the alley. But fun and football weren't enough to keep a family fed in Vila Cruzeiro. His father, Almir Leite Ribeiro, worked every hour available. A man with a bullet lodged in his spine from years of living in a dangerous neighborhood who refused to let his son's talent go to waste. When Adriano was 7 years old, Almir scraped together every coin the family had. Neighbors contributed what they could, and they sent their boy to Flamengo's youth academy, the greatest football factory in Brazil, the club that produced Zico, that would later produce Vinicius Jr. Adriano arrived as a skinny 7-year-old from a favela. He left, 12 years later, as something the football world had never seen before. By 18, he had made his professional debut for Flamengo's first team, scoring 10 goals in 24 appearances. European scouts couldn't believe what they were watching. A 6'2" striker with the pace of a winger, the power of a battering ram, and a left foot that generated more force than anyone had ever recorded. In 2001, Inter Milan called, and Adriano left the favela for the San Siro. Inter Milan loaned him first to Fiorentina, then to Parma. It was at Parma where the world truly saw what Adriano was capable of. Paired with Romanian striker Adrian Mutu, the two formed one of Serie A's most feared attacking partnerships. Adriano scored 27 goals in 2 seasons. Inter Milan watched from a distance and immediately bought him back. He returned to the San Siro in January 2004, and in 6 months, scored 12 goals. His teammates at Inter called him a combination of Zlatan Ibrahimovic and Brazilian Ronaldo. Those were not casual comparisons. Zlatan himself said, "When I came to Inter Milan, the first thing I said to the president was, I demand him to stay, because he is the player I want to play with." Zlatan Ibrahimovic, one of the most self-obsessed players in football history, demanded Adriano stay, because even Zlatan knew he was watching something special. That summer, the 2004 Copa América, Brazil against Argentina in the final. Injury time. Brazil needed a goal. Adriano received the ball on the edge of the area. He turned and struck it. The ball moved so fast the goalkeeper barely saw it leave his boot. 1-1. Brazil won on penalties. Adriano won the Golden Boot. 7 goals in the tournament. He was 22 years old, the heir to Ronaldo, the next Brazilian superstar, the emperor of Inter Milan. The entire football world was at his feet. Then, the phone rang. Preseason, August 2004, Inter Milan's training camp. Adriano was preparing for what everyone expected to be his greatest season yet. Then Javier Zanetti heard the scream. His father, Almir, the man who had sacrificed everything, who had scraped together coins so his son could attend Flamengo's academy, who had worked with a bullet in his spine to give his family a better life, had died of a heart attack. He was gone. Adriano later said, "The death of my father left a huge void in me. I was alone, sad, depressed in Italy, and that's when I started drinking." He didn't go home for a week. He sat in his room in Milan, alone, thousands of miles from everything and everyone he had ever known, and he drank. "I did not know how to hide it," he admitted, "because I was drunk even at training. I was completely drunk. They took me to the infirmary to sleep, and then the club told the press that I had muscular problems. Inter Milan covered for their star player, invented injuries, excused absences, sent people to check on him. But nobody could fill the void that Almir Leite Ribeiro had left. Nobody. From the outside, Adriano kept performing. In the 2004 to 2005 season, he scored 28 goals for Inter Milan, his best ever return. He was named in the top 10 of the Ballon d'Or voting, twice. But those who were close to him knew the truth. The goals were coming from muscle memory, from a talent so extraordinary it could function even through grief. But the man behind the talent was disappearing. By 2006 on the World Cup in Germany, Adriano arrived notably heavier than he had been 2 years earlier. He scored twice. But Brazil, expected to win the tournament, crashed out in the quarterfinals. A year later, Inter Milan made a decision. They sent Adriano back to Brazil on what was officially described as compassionate leave, to recover, to heal, to find himself again. He never came back. Not really. There were returns, loan spells, brief appearances at Roma, attempts to rekindle something. But the Adriano who had made Zanetti's skin crawl with goosebumps was gone. Pictures emerged from Rio de Janeiro. Adriano, visibly overweight, surrounded by members of a notorious criminal gang in the streets of the favela he grew up in. The football world was horrified. Inter Milan were horrified. Brazil were horrified. But Adriano was exactly where he wanted to be. Home. Here is the part of Adriano's story that most people get wrong. They call it a fall, a waste, a tragedy, a cautionary tale about discipline and professionalism. But Adriano never saw it that way. In a 2021 interview, he said something that reframed everything. "I went from heaven to hell in 9 days. My father died, and I realized football was for my father. I played for him. When he left, I didn't know why I was playing anymore. This wasn't laziness. This wasn't indiscipline. This was a man, a 22-year-old boy from a Rio de Janeiro favela who had played football his entire life for one reason, to make his father proud. And when that reason was taken away, no amount of money, no stadium of 80,000 people, no Champions League trophy could replace it. The favela he returned to, the streets where people called him king, where children kicked balls against the same walls he had kicked them against, that was real. That was his father. That was home. Adriano Leite Ribeiro retired from professional football in 2016. He was 34 years old. He lives in Rio de Janeiro. He drinks at the local bar called Nana's, owned by a friend from the neighborhood. He watches football. He talks to people who knew him before the San Siro and the Copa América. He is, by all accounts, at peace. The football world remembers him as one of the greatest what-ifs in history. 74 goals in 177 appearances for Inter Milan. 27 goals in 48 appearances for Brazil. 4 Serie A titles, a Copa América, a Confederations Cup. His 99 shot power rating in Pro Evolution Soccer remains one of the most iconic attributes ever given to a player in a video game. A generation of football fans grew up trying to score goals like Adriano. That thunderous left foot, that unstoppable power. And yet, in all those statistics, there is a story that numbers cannot tell, The story of a boy who played football for his father, who won everything, and then, when the person he won it all for was gone, simply could not find a reason to keep winning. Javier Zanetti, who heard that scream in the hotel corridor in 2004, still gets goosebumps when he talks about it. Not because of what Adriano lost, but because of what Adriano had, a talent so extraordinary that even grief and alcohol and years of decline could not completely extinguish it. Imagine what he could have been if the phone had never rung. This was the story football never fully told you. Subscribe. There are more stories where this came from.